Hiya, I'm Whisper, and this is a YouTube video. A lot of you may know me from various guides or see me around in Ravenhold. And in that time, there's always one common question. Is there a YouTube guide? I want to do it a little differently, however. I could just copy-paste all the guide info into a YouTube video and call it a day, but I feel that doesn't help teach true understanding of a spec. So instead, I'm going to try and explain it conceptually, instead of just giving a priority list to work through. I also want to share some of the more advanced theory crafting work that I do on stream, and bring everyone along for the journey as a community. Let's start off small, the raw basics of Assassination. Assassination is a specialization of Rogue focusing on bleeds and poisons. Let's go over those first. For bleeds, we have Garrote, Rupture, and Crimson Tempest. Crimson Tempest is a bit more involved, so let's focus on Garrote and Rupture for now. Garrote is a bleed that lasts 18 seconds, has a short cooldown, costs some energy, and gives 1 combo point. Rupture, on the other hand, lasts longer, but costs combo points instead, increasing the duration per combo point spent. Note that only the duration increases, not the direct damage. Rotationally, you want to keep these bleeds up on your targets at all time, not just for the damage, but also for the very important passive located at the top of the Assassination tree, Venomous Wounds. Venomous Wounds is by far the most important building block for the spec, accounting for almost a third of all energy gained in a single target, and upwards of half your energy across a Mythic Plus dungeon. Because of the sheer energy gain from Venomous Wounds adding on top of the raw damage of your bleeds, you'll often want to spread your Garrotes and Ruptures to multiple enemies at a time, and this will form the foundation of your AoE rotation. Note that Venomous Wounds only grants energy on Garrote and Rupture, not Crimson Tempest, so it's generally a good idea to make sure your energy is taken care of before going crazy in a big pull. Venomous Wounds, however, requires not only bleed damage, but it specifies that it must be bleed damage against a poisoned enemy. So let's go over our options for poisons. Now for poisons, we have a lot of options, but Blizzard luckily separated them out already for us to make it a little bit easier. There are 2 types of poisons, lethal and non-lethal. There's still a ton of poisons on the screen, however, don't get me wrong, but for PvE we can actually do a bit of process of elimination and make our choice very easy. For lethal poisons, we have 4 options: Wound Poison, Instant, Deadly, and Amplifying Poison. Wound and Instant are both baseline to all 3 rogue specs, with Deadly Poison being the very first point on the Assassination talent tree, and Amplifying being more towards the bottom. If we take a quick look at all of them, there's a familiar pattern. Instant, Deadly, and Amplifying all do the same instant damage on application. In this case, you can consider Deadly and Amplifying Poison as the upgraded version to Instant Poison, which adds a bonus effect to each. Deadly Poison has a damage over time effect added, while Amplifying increases in venom damage. Wound, on the other hand, has an added effect, but you'll see it only does half the damage, which almost disqualifies it right off the bat. Because we're required to take Deadly Poison, this should always be your default lethal poison for anything Assassination. If you're talented into Amplifying Poison for your build, this will take priority as the effect should always be tuned to be more powerful than the fairly minor damage over time effect from Deadly Poison. And it's an optional talent that can be picked rather than the required one of Deadly Poison. If you're going to talent into it, you should at least use it, right? Remember that with the capstone talent Dragon Tempered Blades, you are able to apply 2 lethal and 2 non-lethal poisons at the same time, but the priority remains the same. While there might be some incredibly niche situations where Wound Poison could be better due to the heal block, the complications of that are out of scope for this video. For non-lethal poisons, it's much simpler. By default, we have Crippling Poison, which is a very simple slow. On the class tree, we can then choose to talent into either Atrophic Poison or Numbing Poison. Atrophic is a debuff that reduces all damage the target deals by 3%. This sounds fairly weak, but can reduce a lot of raid-wide damage. Because of that small but wide coverage, Atrophic is usually preferred in raids. Numbing, on the other hand, slows cast speed and attack speed. The damage reduction from Numbing in this case is much better suited to Mythic Plus, where tanks will be eating a lot of melee hits as the majority of their damage taken. Again, here the priority should be straightforward. Crippling is your default poison, and talenting into Atrophic or Numbing will be the priority over Crippling. Now that we know what poisons we're using, and we understand the importance of bleeds, let's talk about the core rotation of the spec outside of that. Assassination is a builder-spender spec in the form of generating combo points, and then using those combo points on more powerful abilities called finishers. In order to generate, we have a lot, but for more of these, it's actually more of a bonus than anything. The ones that we'll be using consistently are Mutilate, Fan of Knives, and Ambush. Currently, they are the main single target generator, AoE generator, and a proc respectively. Before we dive into each one, we have to cover the second most important passive, Seal Fate. Seal Fate is a staple for Assassination, and similarly to Venomous Wounds earlier, is responsible for a ton of resources. This time, however, in the form of combo points. Same as before, in single target, Seal Fate is almost a third of your combo point generation, while it is over half your combo points in AoE and dungeons. At a simple glance, one extra combo point on crit doesn't seem too great, but the important part is that Seal Fate can trigger from each individual hit of an ability, rather than once per cast. Looking at Mutilate, it costs a large amount of energy and generates 2 combo points. You'll see, however, that it attacks with both weapons, meaning 2 unique hits. Each one of these hits can critically strike, granting an additional combo point for a maximum of 4 combo points generated with 1 Mutilate. This ends up being a huge buff to combo point generation. In AoE situations, we have Fan of Knives, which generates 1 combo point baseline. But once again, Seal Fate is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, because for every target Fan of Knives hits, you guessed it, it has a chance to crit, generating a combo point. This can very quickly get out of hand in large pulls, and you'll end up overcapping a ton of combo points just by nature of Seal Fate. The variance on this can also be very high though. Sometimes you'll crit everything and be flooded with combo points, and sometimes you'll just miss the crit and be stuck with nothing. The last generator is Ambush. We don't really use Ambush much on its own, but with the talent Blindside, you'll randomly get free uses of Ambush, which you'll of course want to use. Ambush can also trigger Seal Fate, but it's only 1 hit, so you're only getting an extra 1 combo point there. To use these combo points, we have some finishers. We already saw Rupture earlier, the ever-important bleed ability, and there's the main finisher in Venom, as well as Crimson Tempest. Rupture we already covered. It uses combo points, more combo points making a longer Rupture. And Venom is a 2-parter, doing instant damage to 1 target, as well as giving a short buff that increases poison application chance. Much like Mutilate generating combo points in single target, with Fan of Knives being the AoE generator, and Venom should be considered the single target finisher, with Crimson Tempest being the AoE finisher. There's one last finisher that I haven't mentioned, the simplest of them all, Slice and Dice. Slice and Dice buffs your attack speed. That's it. It's the strongest finisher out of them all, but it is the easiest to use due to a talent called Cut to the Chase. Simply cast Slice and Dice, and it will refresh itself as you cast Envenoms. Putting it together then, you pick your poison, literally. Then you always want to maintain your Garrote and Rupture and get Slice and Dice up. From this point, you're in your main rotation. Generate combo points, and then spend them. If your Garrote or your Rupture drops below 5 seconds, you'll want to refresh them as well. But obviously, we gotta talk cooldowns. A lot of these aren't actually that interesting for the sake of a basics video, so we're gonna speedrun it a little bit. This increases nature damage. Press it on cooldown. This is your main 2-minute cooldown. It duplicates bleeds and poisons, which is big damage. Press it on cooldown, and combo it with Vanish, which grants stealth and is also a 2-minute cooldown. This is a combo point buffer. Press it on cooldown, and then use a finisher whenever you land on one of these shiny combo points. When you use a finisher on the shiny combo point, the value of the finisher is equal to 7 combo points, which is big. If you don't land on one of the shiny combo points, that's cool too, at least you tried. This, use it on cooldown. It's another bleed, and we like that. Kingsbane is a huge nature damage over time cooldown that ramps its damage with every poison applied during the effect. Use it on cooldown, and make sure to have the Envenom buff for it as well as Shiv. This 45-second cooldown is a big AoE button. You'll want to use it in stealth before you pull a pack of mobs in a dungeon. Speaking of stealth, why stealth? And earlier when we comboed Deathmark with Vanish, what was up with that? Well, we already covered Venomous Wounds and Seal Fate, but there is a third important passive for Assassination, Improved Garrote. Improved Garrote is pretty straightforward. If you use a Garrote from stealth, it does big damage. This usually means that if you're going to go into a big AoE pull with Carnage, you want to either be stealthed or have Vanish to spread the improved Garrotes. If you're going to press Deathmark and duplicate bleeds, you'll again want to be stealthed or have Vanish to make sure that Deathmark is duplicating the strong bleed. This also ends up being one of the core benefits of Shadow Dance, although right now it's pretty terrible. Let's talk about Sepsis. Sepsis is a nature damage over time effect similar to Kingsbane from earlier, but it gives a buff right on cast as well as on expiration. This buff can be used to apply improved Garrote. Balancing this with Vanish and min-maxing the buff is actually a pretty huge headache, so my suggestion if you're new to the spec would just be to lose around 1 or 2% of your DPS and play Bone Spike instead. It's much easier for very similar output, I promise. And that's it! All the basics for Assassination. As of recording, you'll want to equip your highest item level pieces, focusing on Critical Strike and Mastery wherever you can, and you're good to go for all PvE content in the game. If you need a refresher on anything or want to take your knowledge a little deeper, I would highly suggest my written guides on Wowhead, Method, or the FAQ in the Ravenholt Rogue Discord. I also included links to everything imaginable in the description. I hope it helped. See ya!